All right, page 621, number 6. Number 6 says x squared minus y squared. In the directions even it says to look at your patterns and find out which one this falls into. So you have to look at your notes and you have to look to see which one does this look like. Hopefully you all agree, and I'm going to number them so we can talk about them. So I'm not all of them, but I'm going to go through. I'm going to go through the first few to get people started, and then I'll answer questions. Okay. Hopefully all of you agree that number 3, it looks like number 3. Number 3 says that what you have to do is take the square root of the first and the square root of the last, and then you're going to have two of them. One's going to be plus, one will be minus. So now that's the same exact thing here. So what does this equal? It says the square root of the first, so x squared, the square root is, and then the square root of y squared is y, and then you have two of them. One is going to be plus and one is going to be minus. If you need to see, like checking it to show why does that work, we have x times x. You could FOIL it out and see x squared. X times my negative y is negative xy. Y times x is xy, and then we have a negative y squared. So the reason why they're opposite signs is so that middle will cancel out. So you have to kind of trust those patterns, but you also have to know, you have to understand them and why they work. All right. So I want you guys to look at number 7, and 7 says that you have 7 says you have a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. Which one does that look like? It looks like the perfect square. And so the perfect square says, remember, says to take the square root of the first, the square root of the last, and it has the same sign as your second one. So I simply have to take the square root of the first, b, and then it has the same sign as the last. Now you always want to check to make sure that it worked. To get this middle term, how do you get that middle term? The middle term is gotten by a times b and doubled. So that would be right. So it's a times your b, so you have a times negative b, and doubled will give me a negative 2ab. So this works. This right here, Luke, says to take, since it says a squared, to get this, you take the square root. This, you get to the square root, and because it's a negative, that's going to be the same sign. To get this middle term, like if I were to FOIL this out, I have to square the first, multiply it together and double it to get this number, and square the last. That's how you would get it. So that's where that term went. Okay. So it's inside, because we undid our FOIL. All right. Skipping number 8, because 8's going to be the exact same as my thing, so we're going to go with some numbers. So number 9. Number 9 is x squared minus 256. So hopefully you guys realize there's two terms, there's a square. I'm hoping either one of two things is going to happen. Either A, it's not factorable, or B, the 256 is going to have a perfect square root. So I want you to find out what the square root of 256 is. She's not here. Okay. 16? Yeah. Is it 16? Yeah. All right, so square root of x is x. Square root of 256, 16. So remember, what is in the middle of these?
A minus.
A minus and a plus. Alright. Now, the same thing happens with number 10. I want everyone to try number 10. If you did not do number 10 last night, try number 10. A for 9 would be, so it's this. So it's this one, so it's difference of squares. So this again is a difference of squares, and number 10, this b squared. So, I want you now to try number 10. Alright, at this point you should have already been able to take square roots. So, square root of 25, class is 5. A squared is A. And then 36b squared, square root is 6b. So, remember when we only have two terms, we have two of them, and one is plus and one is minus. It doesn't matter which one's plus and which one's minus, but one will be plus, one will be minus. So you're taking the square root to get each one of those. Looking at 11, 11 is 64 minus 27c cubed. As soon as I see a cube, I ask myself my first question. My first question, remember, is there anything in common with the terms? There's nothing in common with those two terms. So since it's a cubed, I'm hoping that it's a perfect cube. So I look down and my perfect cube says a cubed minus b cubed is equal to a, and it's the cube root of this, minus b. You square the first, so it's a squared, plus ab, and then b squared. On the, when you're doing your cubes, the one thing you have to remember is that the signs only matter at this point. A and B go away with not being positive or negative. Once this is the only part that it matters. So, what is the cube root of 64? 4. What is the cube root of 27? 3. And so you remember this has to be a minus. So 3. C cubed is C. Now what does this say to do? So square 4, so it's 16. And just a second, 16. Fighting my plus AB, so we're multiplying 4 times 3C gives me 12C. And then what does it tell me to do? Square B. So it's 9C squared. Why would I what? This whole thing is B. Because remember, you have to be able to get back to here. So what do we need at the end? We need C cubed. So C times, we need C squared to get that. What don't you get?
I mean, the square of C, you got, 3C squared is 9C, but why would you put the square at the end again? Because you already did that.
No, that, if I have this right there, if I just have 9C, c is not squared. If I said c would be 2, if I put a 2 in here, that would only be 2. But if I had a square there, then that would be squared. C has to be squared. This whole thing is B. If I were to multiply these two out, I have to be able to get 27c cubed. So 3c times 9c will only give me 27c squared. I need c cubed. So that's why when you do it, you have to B is the whole thing. So you have to square the whole thing. I'm not really yelling. I'm just trying to talk. I'm fighting a really bad cold. But no, because so C, you have to square. You have to square both of those. So you just have to remember that, like how we did here, there was no variable. But if there was a variable, if there was x, it would be x squared. All right, number 12 is the same thing. So try 12. 64 plus 27c cubed. The only difference is on this formula, remember, if this is the plus, that's the plus, but that's the minus.
Wait, what?
On the formula. That's the formula, because the middle terms have to cancel out. So if that's the plus, this stays the plus, but then that becomes the negative. On your formulas, guys, on your difference of cubes and sums of cubes. Where are you stuck? No. Alright, Nick, walk me through this. What do I have to do first to get this first one? Alright, what's the difference between this and that right there? The first one's cubed. So how do you think we went from here to not that cube? So you take the cube root. So you're going to take the cube root of 64. So what's the cube root of 64? You can punch your calculator, not a problem. I had to last hour. So what you do is you go, can you see this? Okay, go 64 raised to that little caret, parenthesis 1 divided by 3. So the answer is 4. So we have 4. And then I'm bringing down my plus because it's the same sign. And now what do I have to do? Yep, and so that is 3 because we found that up here. So 3. And then what about my c cubed? Yeah, we just put c is right. Now what does the rest of it say? What does it say to do? It says a squared, so I am, so a squared, so that means I'm squaring a, so I'm squaring 4. Yep, 16. So now it says to put a negative sign, and it says to multiply the two numbers together. Whenever it says to multiply the numbers together, you always don't worry about the sign because they already told you what sign it's going to be. So you're going to multiply the two together. So it's going to be you're going to have 12c, and then it says to square the last. So you're going to square that. So what am I going to have? So we have to 3 times 3 is 9, and just a second. So plus 9c squared. Now remember that this and this always have to multiply together to give you that number. Remember that these two, the last two, have to be able to give you this number. The first two have to be able to give you that. The middle is going to drop out when you multiply it out. You should always be able to look, oh, 3 times 9, that's 27. C times c squared, that's c cubed. It's always going to multiply out. 4 times 16 is 64. All right. Number 13. 49a squared minus 42ab plus 9b squared. Looking at my patterns, I have to look at them see if they match any of my patterns, and it kind of looks like it's going to match my my square. So my perfect square. So I'm gonna try my perfect square. I'm gonna see if it's a perfect square. If it's a perfect square, remember that you take the square root of the first. So the square root of 49 is 7. A squared is a. Then it told me to take the square root of the last. So the square root of the last is 3b. What did it tell me to do next? Looking at my perfect squares, what sign do I use? Subtraction sign. And I have a square here. Now, remember when you FOIL it, to get this middle number, you want to check to see if you got that middle number. Remember, the middle number will always be 2ab. So, make sure that you check it out. So 3 times 7, because that's what it says on our formula, is 21 times 2 is 42 AB, and that's it, and it would have been a negative. So that is right. So that's the right answer. 14 is the same as what we've done before, so we're skipping to 22. 22 and 23 are be the last ones that I'm going to let you guys try some on your own for a little bit. Alright, 22 is 4x cubed minus 88x squared plus 480x. My first step always is looking at it, seeing if there's anything in common with all terms. So looking at this, is there anything in common with all three terms? 4x. So I'm going to pull out a 4x, and I'm going to see what I have left. What do I have left in this first one? X squared. My second term, what do I have left? I'm going negative 88x squared divided by 4x. So I have negative 22 x. And then we have 480x divided by 4x. So I have 120. At this point, we have to look to see, is this factorable? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Alright, in this section it tells you it's going to be. It says then factor completely. But on the next page that you had to do for your homework, sometimes that's all you can do. How do you know if this part's factorable? Remember that it's AC multiplied together. It's always the last sign, so they're going to add together, because that's from C, just so you know. You're adding together to equal what B is. What B is negative 22. AC. So AC is 120. So we're going to look for two numbers that multiply together that gives us 120. That when you add them, gives you a negative 22. Now, if you don't see them, that means you have to add them all out. If you don't see it right away, that means you have to put it all down. If you have all the factors and none of them added to a negative 22, then that would be done. You'd be done with it.
Okay.
All right? But we know that two numbers work. What two numbers work? 12 and 10. So I have to rewrite this using 12 and 10. So I have 4x, x squared minus 12x minus 10x plus 120. All right, no, it's not. What's my next step, Kelsey?
Then you have to do that negative 12, and then you have to like plug in negative 12. Oh, you have to do that.
So what you have to do is you have to see
Yeah, you have to
see what's in common.
See what's in common.
Yep. So I'm gonna bring this 4x down just so I don't forget it. But remember, that's on the outside. It has nothing to do with our problem at this point. Yep.
Is it still like? Would you get the same results as like you had
The 10 and the 12.
10?
Yep. The only difference is sometimes, but not always, but sometimes you just have to remember that a 1 is in common.
Okay.
But you'll always get the same number.
Okay.
Yes. At the end. Yes. So an x is in common. So x, I'm pulling out x, so I have x
And then you have 12.
minus 12. Now on this side, you always have to remember that now we're looking to get x minus 12 on this side. So when we're pulling out, what are we going to pull out of the other side? And
A negative 10.
negative 10. Negative 10 because we just want x and we want it to be a negative 12. Yep. Alright. Then we have, bringing down my 4x. What is in common with these terms? X minus 12. And then what's left? In this one is x, and in this term, negative 10. Wait.
Oh, okay.
Got it?
Yeah, and put the 10 and the 12 back in.
Any question on 22? 23, we have 1,000 x cubed plus 216 x cubed y cubed. So the first thing you want to do is to find out what's in common. What's the highest number that goes into 1,000 that goes into 216? This is the hardest part, knowing what it is. Anybody know?
I got 8.
It is 8. It is 8. 8 is the highest.
I just want to say it over the phone.
Yep, 8 is the highest. X cubed is also in common. Then you have to ask yourself what's left over. So you take 1,000 divided by 8. And I took out my x cubed, so I can leave that there. And then 216 divided by 8. 27. And what do we have left? Y cubed. What do we see? What do we notice of what's left?
Can't you like cube everything?
Yes, cube root. It's a perfect cube. Yes. So then it goes back to your perfect cubes. So it goes to this one right here. So it's a perfect cube root. Who said I'm? Did someone say I'm lost? No, I thought someone was lost. What's my first step? How do I find out what A is? Cube root it. So 125 cube root is 5. Cube root the last. So 27 cubed root is 3. And y. Same sign. Is that the answer? You got this part. So how, because remember this, because you remember you always have to say, is this the same as that, which is not. So you have to, what do I have to multiply? What do I have to multiply? So 5 times what gives me 125 is basically what you're saying. So but it's 5 squared gives me 25 minus, multiply these together, 15y, and then square the last. 9y squared. Yep.
If it's... Oh wait, no, no.
If it's plus, it's minus. If it's minus, it's plus.
Okay.
The reason why is because you want your middle two terms to cancel out. So one has to only way that they'll cancel if one's positive and one's negative. If they're the same, they're not going to drop out. Okay. So that's why they're opposites, so that the middle term drops out when you would factor it out. All right. So with that said and done, if you still have not, if you have not done the review page, which was page 662, numbers 9 through 16, I definitely would be trying those because these are just like what we just did. And I will tell you that since the book made these up and the book pretty much makes your tests up, they're going to be like those problems, you know. So I just want to make sure you know how to do those. The worksheet is more factoring, but it's not only this, it has a little bit extra. I mean, so it has a little bit on top of it. It has some non-factorable ones. So remember to always check to see it might not factor. So if you don't know how to factor it, you can't figure it out, maybe it's non-factorable and you can leave it till tomorrow if you can't figure that out. But remember, AC, if AC, at this point, when you get AC and you get a number, if you can't find anything to add up to give you that other number, that's non-factorable. That's how you can tell if something's non-factorable or if it says subtract. Alright, I'm going to leave this up for a little bit. You can either write these down so you can check your work as you go at home or in class, so when you're doing them now to make sure you're doing the right ones. And if we got 17 minutes left, so in about 5 minutes, if anybody has questions or so, I can answer more questions. But I would like you to try to work for 5 minutes on these problems, and I'll give my voice I'm going to give my voice a rest too.
I have a quick thing to say real quick.
What?
On that worksheet you gave us, number 5 and 6 is the same.
Did I do 5 and 6 the same?
Exactly.
Yep. That's what happens when you're writing them out. Huh?
Yeah.